The Akkadian Empire (Akkadian) was the first ancient Semitic empire of Mesopotamia, centered in the city of Akkad, and its surrounding region, also called Akkad in ancient Mesopotamia. The empire united all the indigenous Akkadian-speaking Semites and the Sumerian speakers for the first time under one rule. The Akkadian Empire controlled Mesopotamia, the Levant, and parts of Iran, sending military expeditions as far south as Oman. During the 3rd millennium BC, there developed a very intimate cultural symbiosis between the Sumerians and the Semitic Akkadians, which included widespread bilingualism. Akkadian gradually replaced Sumerian as a spoken language somewhere between the 3rd and the 2nd millennia BC. The Akkadian Empire reached its political peak between the 24th and 22nd centuries BC, following the conquest by its founder Sargon of Akkad. Under Sargon and his successors, Akkadian language was briefly imposed on neighboring conquered states such as Elam. Akkad is sometimes regarded as the first empire in history, though there are earlier Sumerian claimants. After the fall of the Akkadian Empire, the Akkadian people of Mesopotamia eventually coalesced into two major Akkadian-speaking nations, Assyria in the north, and, a few centuries later, Babylonia in the south. History of research. One of the earliest references to the Akkadians is in Genesis chapter 10 verse 10, which states that Nimrod is the founder of Akkad. Today, some 7,000 texts from the Akkadian period alone are known, written in both Sumerian and Akkadian. Many later texts also deal with the Akkadian Empire. Good understanding of the Akkadian Empire continues to be hampered by the fact that its capital Akkad has not yet been located. Despite numerous attempts, precise dating of archaeological sites is hindered by the fact that there are no clear distinctions between artifact assemblages thought to stem from the preceding early dynastic period, and those thought to be Akkadian. Likewise, material that is thought to be Akkadian continues to be in use into the III period. Many of the more recent insights on the Akkadian Empire have come from excavations in the Upper Kaba area in northeastern Syria. For example, excavations at Tel Mozan brought to light a ceiling of Ta Amagade, a previously unknown daughter of Naram Sin, who was possibly married to an unidentified Enderneverkesh. The excavators at nearby Tel Lelan have used the results from their investigations to argue that the Akkadian Empire came to an end due to abrupt climate change, the so-called 4.2 kiloyear event. The impact of this climate event on Mesopotamia in general, and on the Akkadian Empire in particular, continues to be hotly debated. Dating and periodization. The Akkadian period is generally dated to 2350–2170 BC according to the Middle Chronology, or 2230–2050 BC according to the Short Chronology. It was preceded by the early dynastic period and succeeded by the III period, although both transitions are blurry. For example, it is likely that the rise of Sargon of Akkad coincided with the late Ed period and that the final Akkadian kings ruled simultaneously with the Gutian kings and rulers at Uruk and Lagash. The Akkadian period is contemporary with Eb-IV in Palestine, Eb-IV and Ejiv in Syria, and Eb-Iib in Turkey. Timeline of rulers. The relative order of Akkadian kings is clear. The absolute dates of their reigns are, as with all dates prior to the mid-late 2nd millennium BC, approximate. Development of the empire. Pre-Sargonic Akkad. The Akkadian Empire takes its name from the region and city of Akkad, both of which were localized in the general confluence area of the Tigris and Diyala rivers. Although the city of Akkad has not yet been identified on the ground, it is known from various textual sources. Among these is at least one text predating the reign of Sargon, together with the fact that the name Akkad is of non-Akkadian origin. This suggests that the city of Akkad may have already been occupied in pre-Sargonic times. Sargon of Akkad. Sargon of Akkad defeated and captured Lugal-Zagassi in the Battle of Uruk and conquered his empire. The earliest records in the Akkadian language date to the time of Sargon. Sargon was claimed to be the son of Laaba-Mor-Itibel, a humble gardener, and possibly a hierodule, or priestess to Ishtar or Inanna. One legend related of Sargon in Assyrian times says that, "My mother was a changeling, my father I knew not. The brothers of my father loved the hills. My city is Azur-Paranu, which is situated on the banks of the Euphrates. My changeling mother conceived me, in secret she bore me. She set me in a basket of rushes, with bitumen she sealed my lid. She cast me into the river which rose not over me. The river bore me up and carried me to Akki, the drawer of water. Akki, the drawer of water, took me as his son and reared me. Akki, the drawer of water, appointed me as his gardener. While I was gardener, Ishtar granted me her love, and for 4 years I exercised kingship." Later claims on behalf of Sargon, that his mother was an Entu priestess. The claims might have been made to ensure a descendancy of nobility, considering only a high-placed family can be made such a position. Originally a cub-heir to a king of Kish with a Semitic name, Ur-Zababa, Sargon thus became a gardener, responsible for the task of clearing out irrigation canals. This gave him access to a disciplined corps of workers, who also may have served as his first soldiers. Displacing Ur-Zababa, Sargon was crowned king, and he entered upon a career of foreign conquest. 4 times he invaded Syria and Canaan, and he spent 3 years thoroughly subduing the countries of the West, to unite them with Mesopotamia, into a single empire. However, Sargon took this process further, conquering many of the surrounding regions to create an empire that reached westward as far as the Mediterranean Sea and perhaps Cyprus, northward, as far as the mountains, eastward over Elam, and as far south as Magan, a region over which he reigned for purportedly 56 years. Though only 4 year names survive. He consolidated his dominion over his territories by replacing the earlier opposing rulers with noble citizens of Akkad, his native city, where loyalty would thus be ensured. Trade extended from the silver mines of Anatolia to the lapis lazuli mines in Afghanistan, the cedars of Lebanon and the copper of Magan. This consolidation of the city-states of Sumer and Akkad reflected the growing economic and political power of Mesopotamia. The empire's breadbasket was the rain-fed agricultural system of northern Mesopotamia, and a chain of fortresses was built to control the imperial wheat production. Images of Sargon were erected on the shores of the Mediterranean, in token of his victories, and cities and palaces were built at home with the spoils of the conquered lands. Elam and the northern part of Mesopotamia were also subjugated, and rebellions in Sumer were put down. Contract tablets have been found dated in the years of the campaigns against Canaan and against Sarlach, king of Gutium. He also boasted of having subjugated the 4 quarters, the lands surrounding Akkad to the north, the south, the east and the west. Some of the earliest historiographic texts suggest he rebuilt the city of Babylon in its new location near Akkad. Sargon, throughout his long life, showed special deference to the Sumerian deities, particularly Inanna, his patroness, and Zababa, the warrior god of Kish. He called himself the anointed priest of Anu, and the great Ensi of Enlil, and his daughter, Enheduanna, was installed as priestess to Nanna at the temple in Ur. Troubles multiplied toward the end of his reign. A later Babylonian text states, in his old age, all the lands revolted against him, and they besieged him in Akkad. But he went forth to battle and defeated them. He knocked them over and destroyed their vast army. It refers to his campaign in Elam, where he defeated a coalition army led by the king of Awan, where he forced the vanquished to become his vassals. Also shortly after, another revolt had been made. The Subetu, the upper country, in their turn attacked, but they submitted to his arms. and Sargon settled their habitations, and he smote them grievously. Rimush and Manisheshu. Sargon had crushed opposition even at old age. These difficulties broke out again in the reign of his sons, where revolts broke out during the 9-year reign. Rimush, who fought hard to retain the empire, and was successful until he was assassinated by some of his own courtiers. Rimush's elder brother, Manisheshu, succeeded and reigned for a period of 15 years. The latter king seems to have fought a sea battle against 32 kings who had gathered against him and took control over their country of what is today the United Arab Emirates and Oman. Despite the success, similarly to his brother, he seems to have been assassinated in a palace conspiracy. Naram-Sin, Manisheshu's son and successor, Naram-Sin, due to vast military conquests, assumed the imperial title, King Naram-Sin, King of the Four Quarters. The Four Quarters is a reference to the entire world. He was also for the first time in Sumerian culture addressed as the god of Akkad, in opposition to the previous religious belief that kings were only representatives of the people towards the gods. He also faced revolts at the start of his reign, but quickly crushed them. Naram-Sin also recorded the Akkadian conquest of Ebla as well as Armanim and its king. Armanim location is debated. It is sometimes identified with a Syrian kingdom mentioned in the tablets of Ebla as Armi. The location of Armi is also debated. Historian Adelheid Otto identify it with the citadel of Bazi, Tall Banat complex on the Euphrates River between Ebla and Tel Brak. Others like Wayne Horowitz identify it with Aleppo, and while most scholars place Armanim in Syria, Michael C. Astor believes it to be located north of the Hamrin Mountains in northern Iraq. To better police Syria, he built a royal residence at Tel Brak, a crossroads at the heart of the Kaba River basin of the Jazeera. Naram-Sin campaigned against Magan, which also revolted. Naram-Sin marched against Magan and personally caught Mandanu, its king, where he instated garrisons to protect the main roads. The chief threat seemed to be coming from the northern Zagros Mountains, the Lulubis and the Gushans. A campaign against the Luluba led to the carving of the famous Victory Stela of Naram-Sin, now in the Louvre. Hittite sources claim Naram-Sin of Akkad even ventured into Anatolia, battling the Hittite and Hurran kings Pamba of Hatti, Zipani of Kanish, and 15 others. This newfound Akkadian wealth may have been based upon benign climatic conditions, huge agricultural surpluses and the confiscation of the wealth of other peoples. The economy was highly planned. Grain was cleaned, and rations of grain and oil were distributed in standardized vessels made by the city's potters. Taxes were paid in produce and labor on public walls, including city walls, temples, irrigation canals and waterways, producing huge agricultural surpluses. In later Assyrian and Babylonian texts, the name Akkad, together with Sumer, appears as part of the royal title, as in the Sumerian Lugal-Ki-Engi-Kiri or Akkadian Sarmat Sumeri U Akkadi, translating to King of Sumer and Akkad. This title was assumed by the king who seized control of Nippur, the intellectual and religious center of southern Mesopotamia. During the Akkadian period, the Akkadian language became the lingua franca of the Middle East, and was officially used for administration, although the Sumerian language remained as a spoken and literary language. The spread of Akkadian stretched from Syria to Elam, and even the Elamite language was temporarily written in Mesopotamian cuneiform. Akkadian texts later found their way to far-off places, from Egypt and Anatolia, to Persia. Collapse of the Akkadian Empire. See societal collapse. The Empire of Akkad collapsed in 2154 BCE, within 180 years of its founding, ushering in a Dark Age period of regional decline that lasted until the rise of the Third Dynasty of Ur in 2112 BC. By the end of the reign of Naram-Sin's son, Shah Kali Shari, the empire had weakened. There was a period of anarchy between 2192 BC and 2168 BC. Shuteriel appears to have restored some centralized authority. However, he was unable to prevent the empire eventually collapsing outright from the invasion of barbarian peoples from the Zagros Mountains known as the Gushans. Little is known about the Gushan period, or how long it endured. Cuneiform sources suggest that the Gushans' administration showed little concern for maintaining agriculture. Written records. The decline coincided with severe drought, possibly connected with climatic changes reaching all across the area from Egypt to Greece. The Sumerian king Ur-Nammu cleared the Gushans from Mesopotamia during his reign. It has recently been suggested that the regional decline at the end of the Akkadian period was associated with rapidly increasing aridity and failing rainfall in the region of the ancient Near East, caused by a global centennial-scale drought. Vice al. have shown archaeological and soil stratigraphic data define the origin, growth, and collapse of Subir, the 3rd millennium rain-fed agriculture civilization of northern Mesopotamia on the Habur plains of Syria. At 2200 BC, a marked increase in aridity and wind circulation, subsequent to a volcanic eruption, induced a considerable degradation of land use conditions. After 4 centuries of urban life, this abrupt climatic change evidently caused abandonment of Tel Lilan, regional desertion, and collapse of the Akkadian Empire based in southern Mesopotamia. Synchronous collapse in adjacent regions suggests that the impact of the abrupt climatic change was extensive. Peter B. Domenical has shown there was an influence of the North Atlantic Oscillation on the stream flow of the Tigris and Euphrates at this time, which led to the collapse of the Akkadian Empire. The Sumerian king list, describing the Akkadian Empire after the death of Shar-Kali-Shari, states, "Who was king? Who was not king? Urgiji the king, Nanam the king, I the king, Ilulu the king. The 4 of them were kings but reigned only 3 years. Dudu reigned 21 years, Shuturul, the son of Dudu, reigned 15 years. Agade was defeated and its kingship carried off to Uruk. In Uruk, Ur-Ningan reigned 7 years, Ur-Giga, son of Ur-Ningan, reigned 6 years, Kuda reigned 6 years, Puzuri-Eli reigned 5 years, Ur-Utu reigned 6 years. Uruk was smitten with weapons and its kingship carried off by the Gushan hordes. However, there are no known year names or other archaeological evidence verifying any of these later kings of Akkad or Uruk. Apart from a single artifact referencing King Dudu of Akkad, the named kings of Uruk may have been contemporaries of the last kings of Akkad, but in any event could not have been very prominent in the Gushan hordes. A nameless king, Imta reigned 3 years as king, Shum reigned 6 years, Ilulamet reigned 6 years, Inimbakesh reigned 5 years, Igeshwas reigned 6 years, Ilagab reigned 15 years, Abati reigned 3 years, Kurum reigned 1 year, reigned 3 years, reigned 2 years, Earaim reigned 2 years, Ibranum reigned 1 year, Ablum reigned 2 years, Puzorsin son of Ablum reigned 7 years, Ilaganda reigned 7 years, reigned 7 years, reigned 40 days. Total 21 kings reigned 91 years, 40 days. Evidence from Tel Lilan in northern Mesopotamia shows what may have happened. The site was abandoned soon after the city's massive walls were constructed, its temple rebuilt and its grain production reorganized. The debris, dust and sand that followed show no trace of human activity. Soil samples show fine wind-blown sand, no trace of earthworm activity, reduced rainfall and indications of a drier and windier climate. Evidence shows that skeleton-thin sheep and cattle died of drought, and up to 28,000 people abandoned the site, seeking wetter areas elsewhere. Tel Brak shrank in size by 75%. Trade collapsed. Nomadic herders such as the Amorites moved herds closer to reliable water suppliers, bringing them into conflict with Akkadian populations. This climate-induced collapse seems to have affected the whole of the Middle East, and to have coincided with the collapse of the Egyptian Old Kingdom. This collapse of rain-fed agriculture in the upper country meant the loss to southern Mesopotamia of the agrarian subsidies which had kept the Akkadian Empire solvent. Water levels within the Tigris and Euphrates fell 1.5 meters beneath the level of 2600 BC, and although they stabilized for a time during the following Earthly period, rivalries between pastoralists and farmers increased. Attempts were undertaken to prevent the former from herding their flocks in agricultural lands, such as the building of a 180 km wall known as the Repeller of the Amorites between the Tigris and Euphrates under the Earthly ruler Shusin. Such attempts led to increased political instability. Meanwhile, severe depression occurred to re-establish demographic equilibrium with the less favorable climatic conditions. The period between California 2112 BC and 2004 BC is known as the Earthly period. Documents again began to be written in Sumerian, although Sumerian was becoming a purely literary or liturgical language, much as Latin later would be in medieval Europe.